They keep asking me why I ran toward the body instead of away from it. I've told the police a dozen different versions, and each one sounds true until I remember what really happened under those streetlights. And before you judge me, just know that the blood on my hands wasn't supposed to be hers. It was supposed to be mine. I shouldn't be telling you this not like this, not on camera, but the truth sounds cleaner in the dark. And last night's streetlight was the only thing that refused to lie to me. Or maybe it lied to. I can't trust anything anymore, not even my own memory. Halloween always does that. The night twists simple things into shapes that don't belong to them. But I swear when I first saw her lying there, beneath that trembling yellow light, she looked like she was sleeping. That's why I ran toward her. People think it's strange, but I didn't rush because I was scared. I rushed because I thought she'd wake up if I said her name. Except I didn't say her name. Not then. Not out loud. The street was coated in smashed candy. Stray wrappers skittering across the asphalt like dead leaves. And somewhere far behind me, kids were still laughing. It was such a normal sound, which made everything else feel wrong. Like I had stepped out of the world for a second and landed in someone else's nightmare. And shy still and small under the lamp was the only anchor holding me there. I remember her costume, clear as glass. Or maybe that clarity is the lie. The first time I tell this part, I say she was dressed as an angel. Wings crushed beneath her, feathers scattered in the gutter. But when the officers asked me again, when they pushed and pushed, I said she wasn't wearing wings at all, that she had on a simple white dress. Nothing else. Both versions feel real. Both versions feel like mine. She wasn't supposed to be alone. I know that much. I just can't explain how I knew it without explaining things I'm not ready to share, not until you've heard the rest. Not until you understand I wasn't there to hurt her. I wasn't there at the moment she... No, I'll get to that. Just listen. I knelt beside her, hands shaking so badly that I almost dropped my phone. I remember the screen lighting up her face in this cold, electronic blue, mixing with the warm streetlight above. Two colors, one soft and one harsh, painting her like she was caught between two worlds. That image stayed with me. Still does. I didn't touch her. People keep asking why my fingerprints weren't found on her dress, on her arm, on anything. They think it means I'm lying, that I'm hiding some violent impulse. But the truth is simpler. My hands just wouldn't move, and I couldn't decide if that was fear or guilt. There was something strange about her posture, something too arranged. It looked like someone had placed her there intentionally, as if they wanted her found in a very specific way. One arm stretched out, one curled close to her chest, like she was reaching for someone who had already walked away. Or maybe she was reaching for me. I don't know. I keep telling myself I don't know. A car passed behind me, its headlights sweeping over us, and for half a second, the streetlight flickered off. Darkness swallowed her, swallowed me, and in that moment, I swear her fingers twitched. I jerked back so fast I scraped my palms on the ground. When the light flickered back on, she was motionless again. Was it real? Was it a trick? Every version of the memory feels possible. I should explain that I wasn't supposed to be on that street. That's actually important. I told the police I was cutting through the neighborhood on my way home, which technically isn't a lie, but it's not the full truth either. I had seen her earlier that night. I followed at a distance, always staying one turn behind. Not stalking, don't call it that, just making sure she was safe. She didn't like walking alone on Halloween, especially not after what happened last year. But I never said that part to the officers. They'd twist it. You might twist it to. The strange thing is, I don't remember hearing her fall. No scream, no cry for help, nothing, just silence, and then the shape of her on the ground, like she had materialized out of the shadows. I've tried rewinding the night in my head, playing it frame by frame, but there's always a gap, a blank space where her final moments should be, and I'm terrified of what might be hiding in that blankness. I whispered something to her, nothing heroic or poetic, just her name, once, barely louder than the breeze. I shouldn't have said it. The moment it left my mouth, everything inside me cracked. It was the first honest thing I had allowed myself to speak since I found her, and honesty hurts more than the lie. I think that's why I can't get the sound out of my head. Her name always echoes louder in memory. As I stood there, trembling, the street seemed to curl inward, narrowing around us. Every house, every dark window felt like it was watching, judging, accusing. I don't know if that was paranoia or intuition, but the feeling stayed sharp. Someone had seen something, someone knew more than I did, or more than I was ready to admit. When the sirens finally echoed in the distance, I took one last look at her. I thought about running, not because I was guilty, not because I had done anything, but because some part of me knew the truth would never come out clean. Truth rarely does. Not for people like me, not for people who cared too much. I stepped back from her, slowly, forcing myself to breathe again. The flickering streetlight hummed overhead, as if it was struggling to stay alive long enough to witness everything. And just before I turned away, I noticed something tucked beneath her hand. Small, shiny, wrong something I recognized immediately. I won't tell you what it was, not yet. That's part of the next chapter. And if you're still here by then, maybe you're ready to hear the rest. I didn't sleep after the streetlight incident. I kept replaying the moment her fingers twitched or didn't twitch hand. Every version of the memory led me somewhere different, somewhere worse. By morning, her face had blurred into this strange mixture of innocence and accusation. I tried telling myself I hadn't done anything wrong, that I had only been trying to protect her. But even that felt like a costume I was forcing myself to wear. Halloween has a way of sticking to you long after the night ends. The masks, the shadows, they cling. They cling to your conscience, too. The police called me in before noon. Not officially, they said. Just some clarifying questions. The officer questioning me was someone I had seen around before, Officer Malik. Tall, calm. The kind of man who seems to know the truth before you open your mouth. He didn't accuse me of anything, not directly, but he watched my face like he was waiting for an expression I wasn't aware of making. He asked me the same questions repeatedly. How I found her, why I approached her, why I didn't call someone sooner. Each time I answered, the details changed slightly. Not intentionally, at least. I don't think so. Memories are fragile things. They change shape depending on the angle of guilt you hold them under. But the moment he asked if I knew her, something inside me locked up. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just pretended not to understand the question. He noticed. Of course he noticed. I told him she had been wearing a white dress. Simple, nothing elaborate. That version felt safer. He nodded slowly, tapping his pen against the metal table. Funny, he murmured. Someone said she had wings. My stomach flipped. I forced a shrug, but I knew he could see straight through me. When I walked out of the station, her boyfriend was waiting outside. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect him to know my face. But he stepped toward me with this quiet fury, this restrained grief that felt sharper than screaming. His name was Ish. I'd seen him a handful of times, always laughing, always holding her hand too tightly, always looking at her like she was something he owned. He didn't speak at first. He just looked at me, jaw clenched, eyes bloodshot. Then he whispered, "Why were you there?" The question hit me harder than anything the police asked. Why was I there? I could answer it a dozen ways, none of them clean. I told him I had just been passing by. A coincidence, wrong place, wrong time. His expression twisted, as if the words tasted rotten to him. You were following her, he said, not accusing me, but stating it like a fact he had already accepted. I denied it, of course. He didn't argue. That made it worse. Someone believing you're lying without even fighting back, that's a different kind of accusation. He just stared for a moment longer, then walked away, and the silence he left behind felt heavier than any shouted insult. After he left, I found myself walking without any real direction, ending up near the same street from the night before. The cleanup team had already been there. The candy was swept away, the wrappers gone, but the faint outline where she had lain was still visible. I stood there for a long time, my thoughts spiraling. I wanted to believe I had been a witness, nothing more. But the way everyone looked at me, the officers, her boyfriend, even the neighbors peeking from their doors, made me feel like they were seeing something I hadn't admitted yet. That was when her best friend found me. I didn't know who she was at first. She approached cautiously, like someone approaching a wounded animal. Her name was Amina. She had this calmness about her, fragile but steady, like she had rehearsed the conversation 100 times. You knew her, she said softly. Not a question, a confirmation. I opened my mouth to deny it, but the words stuck. She studied my face, searching for something: fear, guilt, recognition. She mentioned you once, Amina said she felt someone watching her lately. I felt the world tilt beneath my feet. I didn't admit anything. I couldn't. Instead, I asked if she thought the person watching was the one who hurt her. Amina hesitated, then said she didn't know, but her eyes lingered on me a little too long. People don't need to speak to accuse you. Sometimes their silence does the work for them. I told her she was wrong about me, that I wasn't dangerous, that I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. She gave me a small, sad smile that felt like pity. People don't end up in the wrong place that often, she whispered. Her words followed me home. They echoed louder than the sirens from the night before. I tried convincing myself that I had been misinterpreted, misunderstood, but the truth lingered like a stain beneath my ribs. I had followed the girl because she seemed lonely. That was the story I told myself. But when I replayed the nights before Halloween, when I remembered the corners I watched her from, the times she turned around like she felt someone behind her, I felt something inside me crack. Was I protecting her? Or was I chasing something I didn't want to admit? By evening, social media was full of rumors. Suspicious witness, unnamed male at the scene. Possible connection. They were talking about me without knowing my name. And yet, somehow, I felt exposed. Like they could see the truth leaking through the cracks of my story. But the worst part wasn't what the police suspected. It wasn't what her boyfriend believed. It wasn't even what her best friend whispered. Worst part was the object I saw at the crime. Seen the one tucked beneath her hand. The one I recognized. The one missing. From my pocket the day before. And tonight. I think someone else knows about it. I didn't sleep that night either. The city felt smaller, darker, like the shadows had shifted while I wasn't watching. Every street corner whispered her name. Every flickering light reminded me of the way she looked, frozen, beneath that wavering yellow glow. I kept thinking about the object in her hand, the one I recognized immediately, the one I should never have taken. And yet, I couldn't stop touching the memory. I told people I didn't know what it was, that it didn't matter, that it was nothing. But the truth is worse. It wasn't nothing. It was proof, evidence. Something that could pin the entire night on someone, on me. And every time I tried to throw the memory away, it clung tighter. The next day I returned to the vacant lot where I had hidden it. No one was around. The smell of decaying leaves and wet asphalt pressed against my nose. A reminder that life continues even when death is near. I dug a small hole with my bare hands, dirt clinging to my fingers like a confession. I placed the object inside and covered it. I told myself that this was closure, that it was the right thing to do, but I didn't feel relief. I felt something heavier, something that sits in your chest and presses your ribs together until you can barely breathe. And then I started speaking out loud, to myself, to the night, to anyone who might be listening. I told the story the way it had happened, or at least, the way I remembered it. I didn't touch her, I said. I swear, I didn't touch her, but maybe I did, in a way that mattered. Maybe the air around me shifted her fate. Maybe just being there was enough. Did I push her into it? I don't know. Maybe she fell before I even got close. Maybe I was already too late. Words swirled around me. They didn't make sense. They still don't. Because part of me knows the truth. Part of me remembers the sound. A soft gasp. A quick intake of breath. And part of me wishes I could forget it entirely. I started walking again, tracing the path I had followed her on Halloween night. Each shadow reminded me of a face. Each flickering streetlight reminded me of a heartbeat. I kept seeing her smile, her confusion, her last look before everything went wrong. I can't decide if she looked at me with trust or fear. I can't decide if I wanted her to see either. It was in that wandering that I saw him. The only person who could confirm what really happened. Officer Malik. He didn't look surprised to see me. His expression was neutral, carefully controlled, like he had been expecting this conversation all along. Did you see something? He asked, but I knew better. He wasn't asking. He was waiting for me to break. I told him one version, the first one, a version that kept me clean, that made me a witness, not a participant. He nodded, listened carefully. Then I told him a second version, one that implied I had been closer than I should have been, that made me complicit without naming the act. He raised an eyebrow. That was all. He didn't judge. He just noted it somewhere in his mind or in a file I'll never see. I realized then that even confessions are slippery things. They can be molded, reshaped, twisted like taffy until they mean whatever the speaker wants. And I was molding mine, shaping it, stretching it, hiding pieces that were too sharp to handle. Later, when I was alone, I tried to reconstruct the last moments again. I can't. Every replay introduces new possibilities. Did she glance at me before she fell? Did someone else touch her first? Did I even exist in her final awareness? Maybe I was a ghost, she imagined. Maybe I was the cause of everything. Maybe I did nothing at all. The object I buried haunted me most. I can't explain why it felt so heavy in my hand. Maybe because it represented truth. Maybe because it represented my lies. Maybe both. Maybe neither. I want to tell you exactly what it was, but the truth is layered, wrapped in another lie. It's safer this way. The ambiguity is my shield. The uncertainty is my only defense. I see her sometimes in my dreams or in waking moments. The line between them is gone. She walks past me in a white dress, or wings, or just nothing at all. She doesn't speak. She doesn't scream. She simply watches. Sometimes I hear a voice whispering her name, and it isn't mine. Sometimes I swear I see the shape of her hand reaching toward me. Always, it's too late. Always, I'm too far away. And yet, part of me believes that I can fix it. That if I retrace every step, every street, every flicker of light, I might uncover the truth or bury it deeper. I keep returning to the lot, to the object, to the space where my lies and the night's reality intertwine. I have to warn you, though, don't trust what you see or hear. Not from me, not from anyone, because truth is fragile, and memory is a liar. And the more I try to untangle what happened, the more I feel myself slipping into it entirely, as if I were the crime, the witness, and the punishment, all at once. I will tell you one thing, though, about that night, about the girl, about the streetlight, and about the object. It is the key. It is the thing that connects all the contradictions. But whether I admit the full story, or bury it in another dark corner, I'm not sure I ever can. So if you hear people talking about her now, if you read the reports, if you see the flicker of a yellow streetlight on a quiet Halloween night, remember this. You may think you know the truth, but the truth is already gone, buried in the dark, waiting for someone like me to stumble upon it again. And when you do, you won't know whether to save it, or destroy it. And maybe that's the point, to save it, or destroy it. And maybe that's the point. Story number 1. I know none of this was my fault, except the part where I'm the only one who survived, and the only one who kept playing long after the others begged me to stop. I shouldn't have opened the envelope. I know that now, but when you see your childhood handwriting, your exact handwriting, on something you never wrote, curiosity feels a lot like gravity. It pulls you whether you want it to or not. The letter arrived before sunrise, slipped under my apartment door without a sound. That detail bothers me more than the blood smeared across the flap. People always ask why I didn't call the police immediately. I tell them I was half asleep, or confused, or not thinking straight. But the truth is, I didn't want to. I wanted to see what was inside. I think a part of me always knew it was meant for me. The moment I saw the drawing-crooked house, single window, stick figure on the porch, I felt something heavy twist in my stomach. It was the same picture Myra and I used to draw before playing. Knock once, if you dare. A stupid Halloween tradition in our small town. Or no, tradition isn't the right word. It was more like a rumor that got out of control. A dare passed from kid to kid, year after year. Stand in front of the old Creston house, knock once, and don't look back. That was it. No prize, no secret club, just the thrill of pretending something waited inside. I used to say it was harmless. I still try to say that, but as I held the blood-stained invitation, the memory of that last Halloween came rushing back so fast it made my hands shake. The thing is, I don't actually remember everything from that night. Or maybe I do, but I shouldn't. Memory is slippery, especially mine. I always tell people I barely recall what happened, that most of the night is missing like a torn-out page. But sometimes I slip and say something too specific, something too vivid. Myra hated when I did that. I can still hear her voice as we stood outside the Creston house years ago. "Don't run this time," she whispered. "Promise me you won't leave me alone again." I swore I wouldn't, but I must have. Everybody says I did. The Creston house wasn't haunted, at least not in the way you're probably imagining. No floating ghosts or glowing eyes staring through windows. It was silent, hollow, almost bored-looking, but every kid in town said you could hear something knock back, just once. Not loud, more like a tap on the inside wall. If you listened long enough, you might hear a second knock, or footsteps, or breathing. Kids made up all kinds of stories, but the thing everyone remembers is the boy who never came back. People don't like talking about him now. They call it a tragedy, an accident, a lesson. But the truth is that his name was Ben, and he was Mira's older brother. And the worst part is that none of us thought he'd actually do the dare. He was older, braver, the type who laughed in the face of ghost stories. We egged him on that night well. Some say I did more than others. But I never know which parts of that accusation are real. Sometimes, when I'm honest with myself, I hear the way I might have said it. Just knock once. Don't be dramatic. I don't know if that's an actual memory or just guilt putting words in my mouth. But the look Myra gave me afterward, the mix of shock and betrayal, is something I'll never forget. She still won't talk about what she saw that night. And I won't either. Mostly because I can't trust the parts I do remember. I remember the cold. I remember the silence. I remember the way the porch boards creaked under Ben's feet. And I remember running before he knocked. I must have run. Everybody says I ran. But when I opened the blood-stained envelope this morning, the strangest feeling washed over me. Familiarity. Like I'd been waiting for it without realizing it. Like the game hadn't ended all those years ago, just paused, waiting for me to press play again. Inside the envelope was only one thing. A childish drawing of the Creston house. Done in red crayon. Crayon, not blood, not paint, but the lower corner looked smeared with something darker, something that flaked onto my fingers. Beneath the picture was a single sentence in the handwriting that looked exactly like mine. Your turn to knock. I told myself it had to be a prank. Myra always hated pranks, but maybe someone else from our hometown remembered the story and decided to mess with me. Except I don't talk to anyone from back there anymore. Haven't for years. And nobody knows my new apartment address. Nobody except now she wouldn't. The knock came right as I finished reading. Not on my door, on my wall. One sharp, unmistakable tap. Like something or someone was reminding me of the rules. I froze. I held my breath so long it hurt. Nothing followed. No footsteps. No second knock. Just silence pressing in from all sides. I knew I should look outside my peephole or call someone, or do anything other than stand there like a trapped animal. But I didn't move. It wasn't fear that kept me still. It was recognition. I'd heard that knock before. My apartment isn't old. The walls are thick, solid. The neighbors don't make noise. And yet that sound, it matched the one I heard the night Ben disappeared. I shouldn't say that with certainty. I always claim my memory is unreliable, but I felt it deep in my bones. After the knock, everything seemed too quiet. My heartbeats sounded wrong. My breathing felt uneven. I dropped the envelope on the table and stared at it, half expecting it to move. For a moment I thought about calling Mira. It's been years, but she'd know what to do. Or maybe she'd finally tell me what she saw that night. But no, I don't want to hear her version of events. Her version always makes me look like the villain. I shouldn't have opened the envelope. But now that I have, I can't shake the feeling that the game has started again. Or maybe it never really ended. And if that's true, if the knocking is back, then I think someone else already knows. Because 10 minutes after the first knock, right when the sun began to rise, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Not outside my door, inside my apartment. The footsteps didn't last long. 3 soft steps, slow, deliberate, and then nothing. I stood perfectly still, listening to the kind of silence that feels heavier than sound. I kept telling myself it had to be the pipes, or the neighbors, or my own fear messing with me, but deep down, I knew better. It wasn't the sound itself that scared me. It was the familiarity of the rhythm, like someone trying to see if I'd follow, the same way Ben did. I didn't sleep after that. I paced my apartment until the sun was fully up, checking every corner as if the footsteps might be hiding behind my furniture. And the envelope, it sat on the table where I left it, edges curled slightly as though the paper was breathing. Every time I looked at it, the childish drawings seemed more crooked, more wrong, like the red crayon lines had darkened overnight. By noon, I convinced myself I needed answers, but I didn't know where to begin. Calling Mira felt impossible. Too much history, too much blame, real or imagined, and yet the guilt kept circling back to her like a moth to a flame. I finally pulled out my phone and hovered over her contact for a full minute. Then I put it away. I wasn't ready, or maybe I was afraid she'd pick up. Instead, I took the envelope and walked to my apartment door. I wanted to check the hallway, to prove to myself that nobody had been inside. But when I turned the knob, something scraped against the floor. A second envelope, same childish handwriting, same red smudge, same message beneath the drawing. Your turn to knock. 2 invitations in one morning. I wish I could say I reacted rationally. Called 911. Called Myra. Called anyone. But my first instinct wasn't panic, it was recognition. Like the ritual had steps, and this was simply the next part. That terrified me more than the envelope itself. It felt rehearsed, familiar, inevitable. It felt rehearsed, familiar, inevitable. My hands shook as I opened the door, half expecting a figure waiting in the hallway. But it was empty, perfectly still. The fluorescent lights flickered once, humming like they were struggling to stay alive. I stepped out slowly, scanning the walls as if they might whisper a clue. That's when I noticed something I hadn't before, something too precise to be a coincidence, a faint reddish smear on the wall near my doorframe. Not crayon, not paint. Blood, real thick, drying blood. The same shape as the one we saw on the Creston house porch years ago. I backed into my apartment and closed the door with trembling fingers. For a moment, I pressed my forehead against the wood, trying to steady my breathing. Then, without fully understanding why, I dialed a number I hadn't touched in years. Rayan. He was Myra's cousin, a few years older than us. Always quiet, always watching. I didn't expect him to answer, not after everything, but he picked up before the first ring even finished. You finally called, he said. No greeting, no surprise, just certainty. A chill ran down my spine. How did you? It's starting again, isn't it? He cut in. Tell me exactly what you saw. His voice wasn't frantic or afraid. It sounded like he'd been waiting for this moment. like he'd been preparing for it. That made something twist in my chest, a mix of dread and curiosity. It was just a letter, I said, though even I didn't believe myself. Some kind of prank. Rayon exhaled sharply. Don't lie, not now. I know you heard it. Heard what? The knock. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Silence is its own confession. Rayon's voice softened in a way that felt too practiced. It was never just a game. You know that now, don't you? I swallowed hard, my throat burning. What do you mean? You started it, he said. Not on purpose. But you did. The night Ben disappeared. My fingers clenched around the phone so tightly it hurt. That's not true. Did Myra ever tell you what she saw when she turned back? He asked quietly, because I've heard her talk in her sleep. Every nightmare, every detail. My heart dropped. She doesn't talk to me anymore. Would you if you thought your best friend lured your brother into something he couldn't escape? That's not what happened, I said, but my voice cracked, betraying me. I tried again, louder. I didn't lure anyone. Rayan didn't argue. That somehow made it worse. Do you still have the invitations? Yes, good. Don't throw them away. Don't destroy them. They're part of the pattern. What pattern? The same one Ben followed. A cold shiver crawled through my spine. You're not making sense. Rayhan hesitated, then said something I still don't fully understand. He didn't knock on the door. He knocked on the wall. I felt the blood drain from my face. That detail, the wall, not the door, was something I remembered but never told anyone. Something I thought was part of a nightmare. How do you know that? I whispered. Because the house wasn't the problem, he said. You were... My breath caught in my throat. Rayan, listen carefully, he warned. If the invitations have started again, then the game is choosing you, the same way it chose him. I didn't choose anything, I snapped. I was a kid. That's how it works, he said softly. Before I could respond, Rayan lowered his voice even further, as if someone might hear him. Myra's been looking for you. My chest tightened. Why? She thinks she knows what really happened. She thinks you've been hiding something all these years. My stomach twisted. I couldn't tell if it was guilt, fear, or both tangled together. And what do you think? Rayan paused. I think the game isn't finished with you. A soft tapping sound filled my apartment. Not from the door, from the wall behind me. Once, twice, slow, deliberate. Rayan's breathing hitched. Did you hear that? I didn't answer. I couldn't, because the knocks weren't random. They were following the same pattern Ben used. And as the final tap echoed through my apartment, I realized something horrifying. The knocking was coming from inside the room where I'd left the first envelope. I thought I could handle it. Thought I could ignore the knocks, the envelopes, the way my apartment seemed to breathe with secrets. I was wrong. The game didn't want me to ignore it. It wanted me to participate. It wanted me to remember everything I tried so desperately to forget. By the time Myra showed up, my apartment felt like a cage. Every corner seemed darker, every shadow a shape I couldn't name. I heard her before I saw her, a soft rapping at the door, the kind that mirrors the rhythm of those long-ago knocks. She didn't wait for me to invite her in. She simply stepped inside, glancing around like she was measuring how much had changed, and how much had stayed the same. Myra, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You shouldn't be here. I don't, she interrupted, her eyes sharp, hard, impossible to read. Don't start with your excuses. I've been waiting for this moment for years, waiting for you to admit what you did. Her presence pulled every memory forward, raw and sharp. The Creston house, the porch, Ben that night. I felt my throat tighten, my mind scrambling. I wanted to scream, to deny, to laugh at how ridiculous this was, but every instinct told me she wasn't just angry. She was certain. I didn't do anything, I said finally, though my voice trembled. I was a kid. I didn't know what would happen. Her gaze didn't soften. Instead, she stepped closer. Don't lie to me, not now. You knew the rules better than anyone. You drew them, you wrote them, you made the dares, and you didn't stop him. You left him there. I wanted to argue, but the words caught in my throat. My mind flashed back to the night Ben disappeared. I remembered running first. I remembered the silence after the single knock. I remembered looking back and seeing nothing. But was it nothing? Or was it me who had made it all vanish? You don't understand, I whispered. I barely remember. Stop, she said sharply. You remember more than you let yourself admit. Don't pretend you don't. And then she did something I hadn't expected. She held out her hand and it was an envelope, identical to the ones that had been appearing on my table for days. Same crooked drawing, same red smudge. My stomach twisted. Why do you have this? I asked, though I already knew. Because it's always been part of the game, she said. Her voice was quiet, but every word landed like a hammer. You didn't start it alone, but you kept it going. You played your part perfectly. And now, she paused. her eyes scanning the room, lingering on the first envelope. Now it's time for the final rule. I felt a cold panic rise in me. Final rule. There's a rule. There's always a rule, she said. You just never admitted it. You've never admitted that games like this aren't games at all. The blood on the envelope seemed darker now, almost pulsing, as if it was alive. I stared at it, trying to make sense, trying to convince myself that it was a prank, that Mira had done this herself, that nothing supernatural existed. But a part of me, the part I refused to acknowledge, knew the truth. The game wasn't over. It had never been over. I said, my voice trembling, "You're saying this is still happening? That it was me?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. It was never just him, and it was never just that night. You made the rules. You set the boundaries. You told yourself you were innocent, and you've been hiding behind that lie ever since. I shook my head violently, trying to push back the memories, the guilt, the fear, but they surged anyway. I remembered the knocking, the hallway footsteps, the way my own apartment walls seemed to close in. I remembered Ryan's voice over the phone, soft and accusatory. The game isn't finished with you. And now Myra was here, holding the evidence, confirming everything I wanted to ignore. I didn't mean to, I whispered. You didn't stop it, she said, cutting me off. And now the invitations are coming back. The game has chosen you again. I felt my pulse hammer in my ears. The silence in the room was thick, pressing against my skull, until a faint tap echoed from the wall, the same sound, the same rhythm I had heard for years. My hands shook as I reached for the envelope Myra was holding. My fingers brushed it, and the red smudge seemed to bloom across the paper, darker, more insistent. "Open it," Mira said softly. "It's your turn." I hesitated. Part of me screamed to throw it away, to run, to call someone, anyone. But another part, a deeper, darker part I didn't want to face, pulled me forward. It had always pulled me forward. I opened the envelope. Inside was a small piece of paper, handwritten in the exact style of my childhood self. "Knock once. Don't look back. Finish what you started." I froze. My breath caught. The room felt impossibly still, and then I realized there was no need for anyone else to be here. The game had been inside me all along. It had never left. I looked at Mira, expecting her to stop me, but she didn't. She only watched, eyes steady, as if daring me to follow the instructions I had ignored for decades. I stepped toward the wall. My fingers hovered over the surface, trembling. One knock. That was all it took. One knock and I would know. One knock and everything from that night, everything I had buried, would come alive again. And when I finally did, it knocked once. The sound echoed through the apartment. And then, silence. At first, but then, beneath the silence, I heard another tap, slow, deliberate. Behind me, I turned. Nobody was there, and a small, crooked smile spread across my face. "It's my turn," I whispered. The envelopes rustled on the table. The blood smudges seemed to quiver, and my apartment felt like it had become a house. I no longer owned. The game was far from over, and I wasn't sure I ever wanted it to be. The game was far from over, and I wasn't sure I ever wanted it to be. Story number 1. Before you judge me, you should know that the masked stranger wasn't supposed to be real. At least that's what I kept telling myself right up until last Halloween, when I realized the person under the mask was never a stranger at all. And honestly, I still don't know if I'm telling you the truth or just something I need to believe. I should probably start by saying I didn't mean to lie about that night, but the truth keeps changing every time I try to remember it. Or maybe I'm the one changing it. I don't know anymore. All I know is this. The first time I saw the masked stranger of Elm County, I wasn't supposed to be there yet somehow. He looked like he'd been waiting for me. People always imagine these stories begin with a scream or a shadow crossing the road, but mine started much quieter. Just me and Leah walking down Old Briar Lane on Halloween night, kicking through leaves and pretending we weren't nervous. She kept talking about how every urban legend gets twisted over the years, exaggerated until it becomes bigger than the real danger underneath. I laughed then, or I think I did. It's hard to separate what I felt from what I tell myself I felt. Elm County's masked stranger was the kind of story that stayed whispered, even when the adults pretended it was just a joke. They said he only showed up on Halloween. They said he wore the same cracked porcelain mask, always tilted slightly to the left, and stood unnervingly still, as if listening to something no one else could hear. Some versions said he took people, others said he followed them home and waited for weeks before doing anything. I used to tease Leah about it, calling it the world's laziest monster, but deep down, neither of us liked walking alone on Halloween that night. The air felt too heavy, like the cold was pressing inward instead of outward. Leah noticed it first. She kept glancing behind us, swearing she heard footsteps that didn't sync with ours. I told her she was imagining things, but the strange thing is, I don't remember hearing footsteps at all. Not then, not until later. We were on our way to the abandoned playground near the old church. It was stupid. I know everyone said that's where the stranger was first spotted decades ago. But Leah wanted to film something for her channel, a short exploring urban legends type of video. She always dragged me into these things, insisting I made her braver. I never told her that I only went because I didn't trust her going alone, and because keeping her close kept certain things from unraveling. As we approached the playground, the fog shifted, rolling across the swings like something alive. Leah reached for my sleeve, and I pretended not to notice how badly her hand was shaking. The moonlight hit the metal slide at an angle that made it look like a long, silver blade. I joked about it. I shouldn't have. I think that was when everything tipped, because that was the moment he appeared at first. I thought it was just a mannequin someone propped up as a prank. He stood near the edge of the sandpit, perfectly still, head tilted slightly to the left, just like the stories said. The porcelain mask was smooth and blank except for the cracked mouth, which curved upward not into a smile, but into something that suggested he was trying to remember how to make one. His clothes were dark, not torn or bloody like the rumors claimed, just ordinary, too ordinary, like he could have been anyone. Leah froze. I should have pulled her behind me, but I was rooted. And here's the part people never believe. I swear the stranger knew me, not in a "I see you there" way, but in a deeper, colder sense, like he recognized something I hadn't admitted yet. My first instinct should have been to run, but I honestly don't know if I did. Sometimes I remember stumbling backward. Sometimes I remember stepping forward. Both feel true. What is that? Leah whispered. Her voice trembled so quietly I felt it more than heard it. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The stranger raised his head a little, and the cracked mouth caught the moonlight. I blinked, and he was suddenly closer. Not by a step. More like the world had rearranged itself while I wasn't looking. Leah grabbed my wrist. We should go, she breathed. But then she said something else, something I've tried to forget. Or pretend I forgot. A sentence that cut deeper than any threat the stranger could have made. A truth I wasn't ready to face. And the moment she said it, the stranger tilted his head further, as if agreeing with her. Everything after that becomes slippery in my memory. I recall Leah pulling me toward the path. I recall the stranger shifting, almost gliding. I recall the taste of metal in my mouth and the sound of leaves crunching far too loudly. But the rest is fog and fragments and a bright flash of panic that still wakes me up some nights. When I finally stopped running, if I ran at all, Leah was gone. I don't remember losing her grip. I don't remember her screaming. Sometimes I tell myself she just tripped and fell behind. But sometimes I remember her letting go of me on purpose. Like she knew something I didn't, or didn't want to. People asked me what happened. I gave them answers that sounded rehearsed even to me. Because how could I say I was staring at the mask long after she vanished? How could I admit I felt something familiar behind those empty eyes? I've replayed that night 1,000 times, trying to catch the moment everything broke. But every time, the ending changes. Every time, the stranger seems a little closer. The last thing Leah said to me, no, I can't say that, not yet. People think that after someone goes missing, the world erupts, sirens, search teams, frantic chaos. But in Elm County, it was quieter than I expected. Too quiet, like everyone had been waiting for something like this to happen again. As if Leah disappearing wasn't shocking, just overdue. The police didn't come right away. It took them 6 hours, which I still don't understand. I told them I called sooner, but maybe I didn't. I keep mixing up the order of things. Maybe it just felt like I called immediately because the panic was still fresh in my chest. Or maybe I delayed the call without realizing it. Or maybe I realized it and just won't admit it. Detective Rowan was the first official to speak to me. Tall, calm, and patient in that suspicious way detectives are when they already think you're lying. He had a notebook out before I even finished saying my name. He kept tapping his pen every time I paused, like the silence itself was guilty. Start from the beginning, he said. Not the legend. Your night. I hated the way he said that, like he already decided the urban legend had nothing to do with it. As if the masked stranger wasn't real. As if I had made him up. That's I told Rowan about the walk, the fog, the playground, the figure. But the moment I mentioned the mask, he leaned back and stopped writing. That tiny movement told me everything. He thought I was using the legend as a shield, a cover story, a distraction. Maybe I was, maybe not. When he asked me what the mask looked like, I froze. I don't know why. I knew exactly what it looked like. The cracked porcelain, the lopsided tilt, the shape of the mouth that wasn't quite a smile. I could describe it down to the smallest detail, but something about saying it out loud, something about claiming I saw it, clearly felt dangerous, so I told him. I didn't remember, that it was dark, foggy, but maybe it wasn't even a mask. That was the first contradiction in my story. I watched him write it down after Rowan left. Leah's older brother Mason showed up at the station. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, though it had barely been 12 hours. I expected him to blame most people do, but he didn't. He just stared at me like he was trying to find something familiar in my face and couldn't. What were her last words? He asked quietly. I swallowed hard. He asked me that 3 times. I gave him 3 different answers. She didn't say anything. She told me she was scared. She said she saw someone. Or lies. Or maybe memories I wished were true. I don't know anymore. The real thing, she whispered. I can't say. Not yet. In the days that followed, rumors spread faster than any official update. Kids at school said I abandoned Leah. Adults in town said I had a history of strange behavior. Which is ridiculous. I never had any problems. At least none that anyone knew about. People whispered about jealousy, about fights, about secrets between us. Some whispers were so specific, I wondered who made them up, or if they were even made up at all. That everywhere I went, eyes followed me. But the worst part wasn't the stares, it was the messages. Anonymous numbers, texting things like, you know who you saw, stop lying, check your closet. I deleted them, but they kept coming. Dozens, sometimes hundreds. I changed my number twice, but somehow they always found me again. I tried telling Rowan, but he didn't take it seriously. He said grief can distort perception. He suggested therapy. He looked at me like he was diagnosing me right there in the station, so I stopped telling him things. One night, maybe 3 days after Leah vanished or 4, I'm not sure, I walked into my room and noticed my closet door was half open. I never leave it open. The darkness inside looked thicker than usual, like it had weight. I felt foolish for being afraid, but fear crawled up my throat anyway. When I pulled the door open, something fell out and hit my foot. It was the mask. Something fell out and hit my foot. It was the mask. The same cracked porcelain, the same crooked tilt, the same impossible familiarity. I should have screamed, or called the police, or run. I didn't do any of those things. Instead, I picked it up. My hands didn't shake until after I touched it. After I felt how cold it was. Too cold, as if it had been outside. As if someone had worn it recently, or as if I had. But that part doesn't make sense. I would remember putting it on. I think I hid the mask under my bed. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want Rowan to find it and think I planted evidence. Maybe I didn't want Mason to see it and think I was confessing without saying a word. Or maybe I just didn't want to acknowledge that the mask was real, right there in my house. That night I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the cracked mouth shifting into a wider expression. I kept imagining footsteps in the hallway, or whispers through the vents. At one point I swear I heard someone say my name from inside the closet. The next morning, the mask was gone. I never told anyone that part. Weeks passed. The searches grew smaller. People started saying Leah probably ran away. Others said the masked stranger was back. Some blamed me outright. Some tiptoed around the idea. But no one said what I feared the most. That Leah knew something about me, something important, before she disappeared. And the stranger, I don't know if he listened to her, or if I did. The investigation slowed until Rowan finally called me in again. He said they found something at the edge of the woods. Something that might change the direction of the case. He didn't say what it was. He just told me to come in immediately. And the moment he said that, I felt the cold weight of the mask in my memory, as if it were already waiting for me. I've tried to convince myself that what I saw that night wasn't real, that it was a memory shaped by panic, grief, or guilt. But some part of me feels that it was real. And I keep asking, if it was real, why can't I remember all of it? Why does the memory slip through my fingers like smoke, leaving only flashes of horror and shame? It started the night Rowan called me back to the station. The woods at the edge of Elm County had revealed something, though he refused to tell me exactly what. His tone was neutral, professional, but there was a pause before he spoke my name. I swear, in that pause, the world took. My stomach turned cold. That was the night I first realized the masked stranger wasn't just a story, and I might be closer to him than I ever wanted to admit. The walk to the station felt longer than it should have. Every street lamp flickered as if signaling me, warning me. The fog clung to the ground, curling around my shoes. I wanted to turn back, but some unseen force, fear or curiosity, I can't tell which, kept me moving. When I arrived, Rowan led me to a back room I'd never seen before. The walls were lined with evidence boards, photos, and maps of the county. But one table drew my eyes immediately. There, under a sheet, lay the mask, the same cracked porcelain mask I had seen in my closet days ago. I wanted to scream. My hands trembled. My mind screamed, "This can't be real," over and over. Yet I couldn't stop staring. The mask seemed to absorb the dim light of the room, the tilt of its mouth somehow more pronounced than I remembered. It wasn't just a mask. It was something alive, or at least it felt that way. Rowan's voice cut through my thoughts. "Look closely. Do you recognize it?" I hesitated. My chest tightened. Every instinct in me said to lie, to say no. But something in me apart, I have spent years burying, pulled the words out before I could stop them. Double quotes. "Yes," I whispered. He leaned in. "Then tell me everything you saw." I wanted to confess everything. The first night, the playground, Leah's last words, the footsteps I might have heard or imagined. But even as I tried to speak, my memory fractured. I told him fragments, contradictory pieces, and he wrote them down without comment. That look, calm, patient, suspicious, never left his face. I realized then what I had been denying all along. I knew who the masked stranger was. I had always known. But I had buried it so deeply, convinced myself I didn't, that even Rowan couldn't force me to admit it fully. That night, I returned home, avoiding every shadow, every reflective surface, knowing or thinking that the masked stranger was following me. Or maybe I was following him. The line had blurred. I sat on my bed, staring at the empty space where the mask had been, trying to summon the courage to face the truth. My mind replayed Leah's face, the way she looked at me before she vanished. There was fear, yes, but also recognition. She knew something about me, something I had spent years hiding, even from myself. I remembered flashes, her whisper, my hesitation, the tilt of her head, the subtle understanding in her eyes. I had let her go, or had she let me go? The memory twists, shifts, refusing to be pinned down. Then I saw him, or thought I saw him, outside my window, in the fog-soaked street. The figure stood perfectly still, head tilted left, mouth cracked, clothes ordinary, terrifyingly ordinary. I blinked, and he was gone. Just like that, he vanished. I don't know if he disappeared or I simply couldn't face him. My knees gave out. I pressed my palms to my face and whispered to myself the truth I couldn't say aloud. I saw who was under the mask. The face beneath wasn't a stranger. It was someone I had trusted, someone I had let close enough to see all my flaws, my guilt, my dark impulses, the one person I thought could never betray me. And yet, that was exactly what they did. Or maybe I'm lying to myself. Maybe I'm imagining betrayal where there was none. Maybe the stranger was never them at all. I can't be sure. And that's the worst part. Because every time I think I know the truth, it slips. The memory changes, the mask shifts, the fog returns. I can't tell if I'm haunted by the stranger, by Leah's disappearance, or by the part of myself I don't want to see. Maybe all three. I remember whispering something back to the mask that night. Words I don't even understand now. A confession, a plea, a warning I can't distinguish. The air was cold, thick with fear and regret. My reflection in the window seemed to warp, my own face tilting in impossible angles, smiling in ways I didn't want to. And then I ran. Or maybe I didn't. Memory falters. Reality bends. But one thing is clear. The masked stranger was not just a story, not just a legend. He, or I was real. And what I saw under the mask was a truth I can't fully own. I keep replaying that night, trying to make sense of it, trying to pinpoint the moment everything changed. But every time, the ending slips further away. And sometimes, when the house is silent and the fog presses against my windows, I hear her voice again, Leah's, a whisper so faint, so deliberate, it makes my skin crawl. "I told you, you knew all along." I've never admitted this to anyone. Not Rowan, not Mason, not even the people who claim to understand. And I might never admit it, because if I do, the line between what's real and what's hidden, between me and the masked stranger, might vanish entirely. And then there will be no turning back. So here I am, telling you this, hoping you understand, hoping you don't, hoping that even if the masked stranger never existed for you, he exists in me and, maybe in you too. The last thing Leah said to me, "No, I can't say that, not yet." And that's where it ends. For now, it ends. For now. Story number 4, before you judge me, just remember, the footage only shows what I allowed it to show. And whatever you think you saw that Halloween night, none of it was supposed to be real. I know you've seen the video, but what you don't understand is this. The footage didn't lie, only I did. And if I sound nervous right now, it's because I still can't tell whether I'm explaining what happened that Halloween, or hiding it all over again. Most people think the clip started as a prank. It did, or at least, that's the version I keep telling myself. I mean, why else would I have been wandering into that abandoned house with a camera I could barely hold straight? Why else would Raffi be behind me, whispering like he was scared of waking something up? We planned it, we rehearsed it, we even laughed about how fake it would look. But the thing everyone keeps asking me the question, I still avoids why I kept recording. Honestly, I don't have a real answer. Or maybe I do, and I just don't want to say it out loud. The place looked worse than I remembered. A sagging porch, windows punched out like missing teeth, and a door scratched so badly it felt like something tried to claw its way out. I told the audience earlier that I'd never been inside before, but that's not entirely true. I recognized things, little things. The rusted wind chimes, the cracked front tiles, the smell of damp wood that hit as soon as the door drifted open. But I brushed it off because I didn't want anyone wondering why a harmless prank felt uncomfortably familiar. Inside, the air was colder than outside, colder than it should have been. Our camera lights bounced against peeling wallpaper, scattered debris, and long, narrow hallways that seemed to bend just slightly in the wrong direction. Raffi kept cracking jokes to cover how tense he was. "Bro, this is gonna be viral," he whispered behind me, nudging my shoulder. "If we hear one fake ghost moan, people are gonna lose it." I remember forcing a laugh. "Yeah, fake, right?" He didn't notice how my voice shook. Or maybe he did and ignored it. Raffi always tried to act brave, even when he wasn't. But that night, something in his eyes flickered whenever I turned the camera toward him, like he wanted to back out, but couldn't figure out how to say it. We moved deeper, stepping over broken floorboards and shattered glass. Every sound echoed our footsteps, distant dripping water, and something soft brushing against the walls. I blamed it on rats. I didn't want Raffi thinking I was scared. I didn't want the audience to think that either, but I could feel something in the house, a heaviness pressing down on us, almost like we were being watched. I told everyone in my original upload that we were just 3 idiots messing around. But that's not exactly right. There were supposed to be 3 of us. I keep saying that like it's nothing, but the truth is, I never expected her to show up. I barely knew her. That's what I've said for weeks. Barely knew the victim, but whenever I talk about her, I slip. I mention things I shouldn't know. Her favorite hoodie color, the way she tied her hair, how she always hummed when she was scared. Details I shouldn't remember. Not if she was just some extra in our prank video. The camera shake got worse as we headed toward the living room. Raffi tapped my arm, making me jump. "Chill, man," he muttered. "It's just a video." I swallowed hard. "Yeah, but doesn't it feel like the house is breathing?" He frowned. "Don't start that creepy stuff." But I wasn't trying to be creepy. I genuinely felt the floor vibrate under my shoes. A subtle shift. A low thrum. I still don't know if it was real or if my mind was already breaking that early into the night. The living room had a collapsed ceiling, tangled wires, and a dark stain on the far wall. I didn't mention that stain in the original video because I knew people would pause, zoom in, make theories. And I didn't want theories not about blood, especially not then. We filmed ourselves pretending to hear footsteps, fake laughter, forced jumps. It should have been harmless. But when Raffi wandered out of frame to check the hallway, I kept recording in his direction even though I didn't know why. The camera angle dipped, catching a glimpse of something, a shape near the doorway. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the shadows. A coat hanging, a beam of broken light, something ordinary. But as the camera steadied, the shape shifted. It elongated, leaning inward, almost as if it were studying us. I swear it looked like someone standing just beyond the threshold, head tilted sideways, motionless, watching. When I reviewed the footage later, the figure was clear to clear, but in the moment, I didn't see anything. I didn't react. People ask me why I didn't scream or call out, why I didn't warn Raffi. I don't have a good answer. I keep telling myself I simply didn't notice, that I was too focused on the shot, but deep down, I wonder if a part of me recognized the shape, and that's why I ignored it. Raffi came back, brushing dust off his hoodie. "Basement next?" he asked. I nodded, though my stomach twisted. "Yeah, basement." I didn't tell him I felt sick. I didn't tell him the camera suddenly felt hotter in my hands, like it didn't want me to let go. Instead, I turned toward the hallway again, forcing a smile that didn't feel like mine, and then it happened. As we moved toward the basement door, the camera briefly panned back toward the living room and the shadowy figure was gone. Not faded, not blurred out, gone like it had slipped away while we weren't looking. I should have stopped recording right then. I should have turned around, grabbed Raffi and left the house. But I didn't. I told myself it was nothing, a glitch, a trick of the light. But if it was nothing, then why does the figure appear again, clearer, when the basement footage begins? That's where the real story starts, and that's where everything begins to fall apart. If the first part of the footage felt staged, everything that happened once we reached the basement door was the opposite. And before you ask, yes, I remember what I said earlier, that I wasn't paying attention, that I didn't notice the figure behind us in the living room. But the moment my hand touched that basement handle, something inside me froze like it recognized what was waiting below. Maybe I had seen the figure, maybe I just didn't want to believe it. The basement door groaned open with the kind of sound that sticks to your ribs. Cold air rushed upward, brushing against my face as if something down there exhaled. My camera light flickered twice, then steadied, casting a weak cone into the darkness. Rafi leaned over my shoulder, trying to look braver than he felt. "You sure we should go down?" he asked quietly. I forced a grin. "It's a prank video. Remember, we need reactions. Nothing scary happens upstairs." He nudged me with his elbow. "Yeah, but this feels different. That was one word for it. From where we stood, I could only see the first few steps. The rest of the staircase disappeared into a thick darkness that seemed heavier than the house above it. I didn't mention this in the original upload, but the darkness wasn't normal. It almost looked like it was moving, like something shifting just beyond the edge of the light. I swallowed the fear creeping up my throat. "We're wasting time. Let's just get one take," Rafi sighed. "Fine, but if something jumps out, I'm hitting you first." We both laughed, but only one of us meant it. I took the first step. It creaked loudly, echoing through the basement like a warning. My camera shook, and I steadied it with both hands. The deeper we went, the colder it became, as if the house was trying to push us back upstairs. When we reached the bottom, the floor was covered in dust except for a strange trail along uneven path where the dust had been disturbed, like someone crawled across it recently. "Probably animals," I muttered before Rafi could overthink it. But even I didn't believe that. The smell hit us next, damp, moldy, and faintly metallic. My heart pounded against my ribs. I told myself it was just old pipes, old wires, old everything, but I'd smelled something like that before. And once again, I refused to think about where. "Do you hear that?" Rafi whispered suddenly. We froze. At first, I thought it was my imagination. Then, faintly, a soft humming, a woman's humming, familiar, too familiar. Rafi grabbed my arm. "What the hell is that?" "I don't know." I lied. Of course, I knew. I just didn't want to say her name. Not yet. We followed the humming deeper into the basement. The walls tightened around us, narrowing like a throat. Pipes dripped water that echoed like distant footsteps. My camera flickered again. When the light returned, something on the far wall caught Rafi's attention. "Shine it over there," he whispered. I lifted the camera. In the center of the concrete wall, a single handprint smeared down the surface. Dark, old, or at least I wanted to believe it was old. Rafi stepped closer. "Bro, if this is real blood, tell me this is part of the prank." I opened my mouth, but before I could respond, a scream ripped through the basement. Not a fake scream, not an acted one. A raw, breathless, desperate scream. A woman's scream. Rafi nearly fell backwards. "What was that? Who's down here?" Rafi nearly fell backwards. "What was that? Who's down here?" I don't. My voice caught. My throat tightened. Something in that scream hit me like a memory slamming back into place. Without thinking, I moved toward the sound. My camera pointed ahead, its shaky beam slicing through the darkness. The humming had stopped. The scream had stopped. But the silence that followed was somehow worse. That we turned the corner. And there she was. Hania. That I didn't say her name. Not then, not in the video, not in the report. She was standing near the back wall, a flashlight in her hand, breathing hard like she'd just run a marathon. Her eyes were wide, terrified, darting around the room as if expecting something to lunge out of the shadows. Dust clung to her clothes. Her hair was tangled. Her hands were shaking. I felt my stomach drop. I tried to mask the way my heart lurched. Rafi hissed. "What are you doing here? You were supposed to meet us outside." She shook her head frantically. "You don't understand. I heard something down here. I thought it was you guys. And then something moved behind me." She stopped, staring at the camera. "You're recording?" Yeah, I said weakly. "We thought you bailed." Her voice cracked. I should have. Before we could say anything else, something thudded in the darkness behind her. She spun around, flashlight shaking wildly. "Did you hear that?" she cried. Rafi stumbled backward. "Man, this isn't funny anymore." "I know," I said, though the words came out hollow. I panned the camera toward the sound. The screen flickered against static for half a second. When the picture cleared, something appeared at the very edge of the frame. A shadow, tall, still, watching, I felt my pulse smash against my ribs. I blinked hard, trying to make sense of it. But when I looked up from the camera, nothing was there. Hania grabbed my arm so tightly her nails dug into my skin. We need to leave now. Rafi nodded violently. Yeah, forget the prank. Forget the video. We're done. But before I could agree, before I could even breathe, the lights on our devices flickered once more. Then the basement plunged into complete darkness. Hania screamed again. And this time, it sounded like she wasn't screaming at something, but because it finally touched her, the footage cuts right there. The next part, what happened when the lights came back, is what people still argue about online, and it's what the police kept asking me to explain. But the thing is, I'm still not sure I want to remember it. The basement footage ends abruptly. But what happened after? I've been telling myself different versions ever since, and that's the problem. Even I don't know which one is true. Some nights I replay it in my head, thinking I remember everything perfectly. And some nights I convince myself it was all a hallucination, a prank gone too far. Either way, the audience only ever saw what I chose to show, and what I didn't show, well, that's the part that ruined everything. When the lights finally returned, the basement was empty. Hania was gone. Rafi was staring at me like he wanted to hit me and hug me at the same time. His face was pale. His lips trembled. Where is she? He whispered. I told him the only thing I could think of. I don't know, but I did know. Or at least, I thought I did. I panicked, flipping the camera toward the stairs, toward the shadows, toward anything that would explain why she disappeared. There was no movement, no sound, only the echo of dripping water and our own ragged breathing. The basement felt wrong, like it had shifted while we weren't looking. I told the audience later that I grabbed Rafi and ran, that we ran upstairs, burst out of the house, and called the police immediately. That's partly true, but I left out the part where I turned back. Just for a second, I thought I saw her Hania standing at the edge of the basement stairs. She didn't move, didn't speak, just looked at me with wide, terrified eyes. I blinked, and she was gone. I've always wondered if I imagined it, or if she really was there. The camera caught something. The flicker, a shadow, a shape that didn't belong. I edited it out. I couldn't leave that in. People would have called me insane. Maybe I am. The police arrived later that night. I told them our story. Prank, abandoned house. Friend missing. Hania was missing, not dead. That was the line I stuck to. I didn't mention the figure, or the scream, or how the basement seemed alive. They asked questions I couldn't answer, or rather, I refused to answer honestly. I made it clear, if she left, it wasn't my fault. If she was hurt, I didn't do it. Rafi gave his statement. It matched mine, mostly. Except he saw things I didn't, or maybe I didn't want to see. He claimed he saw someone moving in the shadows, moving fast, almost too fast to be human. I said nothing. He didn't ask who. Over the next few days, the story blew up online. People called it a viral prank gone wrong. Conspiracy theories, ghost hunters, fake screams. I posted carefully edited clips, showing just enough chaos to keep viewers hooked, but never the basement footage that really mattered. Some of the comments worried me more than the police. The camera captured something behind you, one wrote. Did you see her eyes? She's terrified. Another, the shadow at 2:13 too clear to be fake. And they were right. But they didn't know the half of it. Weeks passed. Rafi stopped talking to me. I could tell he suspected something, even though he never said it outright. He probably knew I was hiding more than just editing choices. Maybe he knew I was lying about her disappearance. Maybe he suspected I had done something I couldn't admit even to myself. I started sleeping with the lights on, reviewing every clip, every frame, trying to convince myself it wasn't my fault. Sometimes, when the house was quiet, I swore I heard her humming again. Faint, almost behind me, or maybe inside me. That sound, the one she made when she was scared, stayed with me. The camera had captured it, and I replayed it obsessively, searching for answers I knew I wouldn't find. The truth is, what people believe happened and what actually happened are different. Everyone thinks the killer is someone else, someone external, someone sinister, unknown. The police even hinted it could have been Rafi or even Hania herself if she panicked and fell. But I know the truth, even if I don't fully understand it. I saw her or him or it, and I kept recording. Months later, I tried to return to the house. Not to investigate, not to find proof, just to stare at it and tell myself I hadn't caused it. The door sagged the same way, windows empty, walls silent. But inside, I felt it the same heaviness, the same pressure, like the house remembered, like it was waiting. I keep the camera with me now. I film small things, empty streets, dark corners, abandoned buildings. And sometimes, I see it. shadows flickering just beyond the lens. Sometimes I hear that faint hum, almost inaudible, and I wonder if it's watching me or if I'm watching myself. I've told myself I'm done confessing. I've told myself the footage is the only proof, the only evidence. But there's something worse than evidence, something no one can see. The knowledge that even if the world forgets, even if the police close the case, the truth doesn't leave me. The figure, the scream, Hania's eyes, they haunt me. And the final piece. The piece I've never admitted publicly. The real killer isn't gone. Maybe it never left. Maybe it's still there, waiting, watching. Maybe it's me. When the camera went dark in the basement, I swore I'd never return. But here I am, telling you this, confessing, editing, hiding, showing just enough. The story isn't over. It never will be. Because the person or thing that started this nightmare that Halloween night, it's still out there, and it knows you're watching. And maybe it's waiting for you, and it knows you're watching. And maybe it's waiting for you.
If I break the rules, the forest takes me. That's what they said. But no one ever told me what happens when you follow them too perfectly. If I break the rules, the forest takes me. That's what they said. But no one ever told me what happens when you follow them too perfectly. That's how I usually start this story. Because that's the line that stuck with me. The one I still hear whispering through the trees when the wind slides across the lake. When I first got here, I didn't think much of it. Camp Ashwood, they called it. Just a handful of wooden cabins, a tool shed, and a crooked pier stretching into the fog. The kind of place parents sent their kids to make memories and come back with sunburns and mosquito bites. But the camp had been shut down for years. Something about safety violations and unexplained incidents. I got the caretaker job from an email. No interview, no signature, just a message with the subject line. Caretaker needed, Ashwood. Season ends when the lake freezes. The sender's name was Mr. D, but the weird thing? The email vanished from my inbox the next morning. Completely gone. Like it had never been there. When I arrived, there was no one to greet me. Just a key in an envelope nailed to the signpost at the entrance. I remember thinking, how do they even know I'm here? The first few hours were quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that eats at the edges of sound. Until you start hearing things that aren't there. Like breathing behind you. Or footsteps syncing perfectly with your own. That night, in the caretaker's cabin, I found the rules. They weren't printed like safety instructions. They were handwritten, in thick, uneven strokes, on yellowed paper that smelled like rain and iron. The top read, Rules for the Caretaker. There were 12 of them. Most were simple. Lock every cabin before sundown. Never stay in cabin 7. Do not enter the forest after dark. Ignore voices calling from the lake. But others were. Stranger. Always leave one lantern burning in the dining hall. If you see smoke from the chimney, do not investigate. If you find another copy of these rules, burn it. I laughed when I first read them, thought it was a prank, maybe an urban legend passed down from previous staff. But when I turned the page over, I saw my name written at the bottom, Eli, in my own handwriting, except I hadn't written it. I tried to explain that in my vlog later that night. Well, not vlog, exactly. I just record things for myself. Audio logs, mostly. Helps keep me sane out here. But when I played it back, there was a pause in the middle. An 8-second stretch of silence. And during that silence, I swear I heard something breathing right next to the mic. The days blended fast after that. Morning fog, cleaning, repairing fences, listening to the woods. The woods never stopped moving. You could feel them breathe, branches flexing, pine needles sighing. I told myself it was wind, but wind doesn't whisper your name. The first real sign something was off came on the 4th night. I was out by the pier, checking the locks on the canoes. The lake was flat, too flat. Not a ripple, not even from the wind. Then I saw it, a reflection in the water. Not mine, someone standing right behind me. When I turned around, there was no one there. I left the lights on that night, every single one. The next morning, when I went to make coffee, the rule sheet was gone from my desk. I thought maybe I'd misplaced it. Maybe I'd put it in one of the drawers. But when I opened the cabin door to step outside, I saw it nailed to the door frame. Fresh nails, wet ink, and one rule was different. Number 3 didn't read, "Do not enter the forest after dark" anymore. It said, "Do not let the forest see you." I didn't understand what that meant, not then, but all day I felt like something was watching me. From the tree line, from the cracks in the windows, even from my reflection in the lake. That evening, the power flickered. Once, twice. Then faintly, I heard children laughing near the shore. I remember freezing mid-step. The camp had been empty for years. There weren't supposed to be any children here, but I heard them. Soft giggles, splashing, a voice singing what sounded like a lullaby. I couldn't see them, just shadows moving across the mist. I called out, asked if anyone was there. The laughter stopped. Then something answered. A whisper, low, drawn out, "Eli, follow the rules." I dropped the flashlight. When I picked it up, the pier was empty again. The surface of the water rippled, like something had just sunk below it. I went back to the cabin, locked the door, and checked the rules again. There was a 13th line now, tiny, scrawled at the bottom in that same ink. 13. Do not talk to the children by the lake. I didn't write that. I swear I didn't. That night I tried to sleep. Every creak of the cabin made my pulse spike. Every gust of wind sounded like breathing. I remember checking the clock at 2:17 a.m., then blinking, and it was 4:03. My phone battery had drained to 0, even though it had been charging. When I stepped outside at dawn, something else had changed. The trees were closer. I don't mean it looked that way. I mean the tree line itself had shifted inward, surrounding the camp in a perfect ring. No paths left leading out. And on the cabin door, a new piece of paper fluttered beneath the first. Same ink, same hand. Welcome to Camp Ashwood, caretaker. Do not forget Rule 3. Only now, Rule 3 didn't say what it used to. It said, "Do not let them see you again." And that's when I realized someone else had written those rules before me. Or maybe it was me all along. They were laughing. I know that sounds normal, kids at a summer camp, but there wasn't a single child registered here this year. Not one, and yet they were there. I heard them. The first time I noticed it, I thought it was a trick of the wind. The lake was calm that morning, mist hovering over the water like a thin curtain. I was checking the canoe locks, humming a song I hadn't thought of in years when it happened. Laughter, high-pitched, unsteady, bouncing across the fog. Splashes in rhythm, almost musical. My skin prickled. There was no one there. The camp was empty. I told myself it's the echo, the fog. Your mind playing games. I stepped closer to the shore. The sand was wet, sticky under my boots, and then I saw them. Shoes, tiny, mud-caked sneakers, lined up perfectly at the water's edge. No socks, no children, just the shoes. I crouched down, touching one. Fresh mud clung to the sole. Fresh. Someone had been here recently. My pulse hammered. I grabbed my phone and called Mr. D. The line clicked, and then his calm, measured voice came through. "Eli, there are no children registered this year. You must be imagining things." I laughed nervously. "I'm not imagining it. There are shoes, footprints. Someone was here, I swear," he sighed. "You know the rules, Eli. Do not interact with anything you're not supposed to. The camp is empty. Focus on your duties." I hung up staring at the lake. The shoes were gone when I blinked. Just gone. No tracks in the mud either. I shook my head, thinking maybe I had dropped the flashlight or misremembered. But the memory of tiny sneakers lined up neatly, facing the water, stayed with me. That afternoon, I went to check the forest perimeter. Every tree seemed closer, more twisted than the day before. Branches scraped the cabin roofs. My boots squished in the mud along the edge of the lake. And again, I heard it, splashing, laughter. I froze, every nerve screaming. I thought about the rules. Rule 4. Ignore voices calling from the lake after midnight. But it was daylight, and still. They were there. I crouched behind a tree and watched. The mist swirled and then I saw them. 2 children, no older than 7 or 8, skipping stones across the lake. They wore faded clothes like decades-old uniforms. Their faces were blurry, almost shifting. One moment it looked like a boy, the next a girl, and then it was someone else entirely. I whispered their names, though I didn't know them, and they turned. They stared at me, perfectly silent. Then, slowly, they began to whisper back, voices like a soft breeze. Eli, come play. My hands shook. I took a step forward, then stopped. Something about their movement was wrong. Too deliberate, too slow, like marionettes. I spun around, heart pounding, and when I looked back, the children were gone. The ripples on the lake remained, but no laughter. No footprints. That night I recorded it. I pressed my phone against the cabin window, hoping to capture even a shadow. The screen showed nothing, just the reflection of my own pale, sweating face. But in the audio playback, faint giggles, whispering, calling my name. I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the cabin felt like tiny feet running along the walls. Every gust of wind sounded like soft whispers from the lake. And in the corner of my mind I started wondering, had they always been here? The way the forest felt alive, as if watching, it all seemed connected. By morning, I convinced myself it was nothing. My imagination, stress, isolation. But the lake didn't lie. When I went to check, the water's edge was scattered with more shoes. Different ones this time. Sandals, sneakers, a single boot with a broken strap, and fresh footprints leading nowhere. I called Mr. D again. My voice trembled. They're here, children, by the lake. I can see their footprints. You have to send someone. Eli, I told you, no children are here. Stay in the cabins. Follow the rules. He hung up before I could reply. I began to wander the camp, avoiding the lake, but I couldn't escape the feeling that something was behind me, watching me. The mist would part just enough to show a shadow moving between the trees. And then, as I passed the old mess hall, I saw one of the children, standing in the doorway, pale, dripping water from the lake. I froze. The child's eyes were too large, too dark, almost hollow. It tilted its head, smiling. A whisper floated through the air. You see us now, Eli. I spun around. Empty hall. Just the echo of laughter bouncing through the fog. Over the next few days, I would see them again. On the pier, skipping stones. In the woods, their small hands waving. Shadows flitting across the cabins at dusk. They never spoke in full sentences. Only fragments, riddles, names and warnings. Rule. Broken. Don't. Look. Remember. I stopped trying to reason with it. I stopped trying to call Mr. D. I couldn't explain this. And part of me didn't want to, because the forest felt older than me, older than the camp. And the children, they weren't just children. That night, I finally understood. Rule 4. Ignore voices calling from the lake after midnight. They weren't calling for anyone else. They were calling me. And I knew deep down if I answered, there would be no going back. I wasn't supposed to go in. I knew it the second my fingers touched the doorknob. But the door, it was calling me. whispering, promising answers I didn't want but needed. I had been following the rules, or at least pretending to, avoiding the lake, ignoring the children, never stepping past the cabin's boundaries after sundown. It was exhausting, living in constant vigilance, but curiosity has a way of breaking even the strongest precautions. Cabin 7, the forbidden cabin. Every night it loomed across the field, windows dark, paint peeling, door always closed. The rules were crystal clear. Never enter cabin 7 after sundown. And yet there I was, standing in front of it, flashlight shaking in my hands, heart hammering like it would burst through my chest. The first time I tried to rationalize it, I told myself maybe someone left something inside, maybe a stray animal, maybe a clue. But deep down I knew it wasn't rational, not here, not in Ashwood. The door was cold under my hand. The wood groaned when I turned the knob, a sound like bones cracking. I froze for a heartbeat, listening, straining against the forest's oppressive quiet. Then I stepped inside. The air was thick, damp, rotten. My flashlight barely pierced the shadows. The smell of old smoke and mildew burned my nose. And then I saw it. The walls, covered in writing. Names, dates, tiny sketches of eyes, hands reaching out, children laughing or crying, I couldn't tell. All of it was fresh, wet ink, moving slightly as though breathing. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping the flashlight. That's when I noticed the mirror, small, cracked, leaning against the wall. And I saw a face, not mine, or maybe mine, but wrong. The eyes too wide, too black. The lips stretched in a smile I didn't recognize. I blinked, and it changed. A child's face. No, two children. Shadows flickering across the reflection, laughing silently. Then one of them whispered, "You shouldn't be here." I swallowed hard. My knees shook, but I couldn't leave. I felt compelled. My own curiosity had become a leash. I explored further. Old furniture, beds, chairs, toys scattered haphazardly. Every surface had handprints. Tiny ones, cold ones. And then I heard it. The laughter again, coming from behind me. I turned slowly, empty. Only the wall. Only shadows. But the shadow moved. It slid along the floor, curling around the legs of the furniture, rising toward the ceiling. And I realized it wasn't just a shadow. It was alive, watching, waiting. I tried to leave, but the door slammed shut behind me. No wind, no hands, just shut. Panic surged. I pounded the door, my flashlight swinging wildly. That's when I noticed the diary, old leather-bound, sitting on a desk. I opened it. The handwriting, my handwriting. Every entry was from years ago, describing the same experiences. The children, the rules, cabin 7. And then one line stopped me cold. The caretaker becomes the cabin. I staggered back. My flashlight illuminated something in the corner. A small figure, hunched, shivering, staring at me. A child. No, my reflection again, but wrong. The lips, the eyes, the smile. It was me, and yet it wasn't. "You broke the rule," it whispered. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry. My mind raced. I wanted to explain, to apologize, to say I didn't know. But it didn't matter. They were here, all of them, watching, judging. The cabin seemed to stretch, expand. The walls pulsated slightly, like breathing. The air thickened. I could hear footsteps on the roof above me, scratching. Something, or someone, moving in patterns too precise to be random. I stumbled out into the hallway, and that's when I noticed the windows. Outside, the forest pressed closer. The children, no, the shadows, danced in the moonlight, circling the cabin, calling my name. I swear one touched the glass. A hand, small, cold, leaving a streak of frost. I ran. I don't remember how. I don't remember the mud or the rocks cutting into my palms. I just remember breaking the last rule. I looked back, and that's when I saw them all, lined up at the edge of the tree line, watching, waiting, smiling. I made it back to my cabin, slamming the door behind me. My hands shook so violently I could barely write this. My flashlight fell to the floor, and when I picked it up again, I saw it. The rule sheet. 19 lines now. I hadn't counted them before. Line 14 had appeared, freshly inked. 14. Once you see them, you belong to them. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every shadow, every creak of the cabin floor, every whisper outside the window reminded me of what I'd done. I'd broken the rule. I'd entered cabin 7, and now the children, or whatever they were, knew I was aware. I started hearing voices in my own head, whispers repeating fragments of my past, memories I didn't remember living, names I didn't know calling out. My reflection in every dark surface shifted, sometimes showing the cabin's walls behind me instead of the room, sometimes showing the lake still and fogged, and that's when I realized the worst part. Cabin 7 wasn't just a room. It was a warning, a mirror, a trap, and I had walked straight into it. Now, every step I take is measured. Every glance over my shoulder counts, because I know they're following, waiting, and I can't tell if they are real or if I'm already part of the rule. All I know is I broke the one rule I wasn't supposed to touch, and from now on, nothing will be the same. I thought leaving cabin 7 meant I was free, that I could escape the rules. I was wrong. I never left. I just became part of them. The forest presses in closer every day. I wake up to it breathing against the cabin walls, stretching across the clearing, folding the mist like a blanket over the camp. The children, or whatever they are, follow me everywhere. I hear them even when I can't see them. Whispers, giggles, footsteps, splashes on the lake, always at the edge of my vision, vanishing when I look directly. I stop trying to record it. My phone, my camera, whatever I bring, turns black in their presence. Static, distorted audio. Every attempt at proof fails. It's as if the camp itself erases my evidence. But I know what I saw, I know what I heard, and I know that I am trapped. Mr. D doesn't answer anymore. The phone line is dead, though the number still rings. I've called it every hour, tried every device, all silence. Occasionally, when I pick up, I hear only a whisper, "Caretaker," and then the line goes dead. I've tried leaving, walking down the dirt road past the tree line, driving to the highway, but every path loops back to the camp. The forest shifts, like it has memory. Every tree is a marker, every fog a wall. I've started to suspect the children are not simply shadows. They are guides, or jailers, or something worse. I see them more clearly now. Not fully, but fragments. Pale faces hovering at the edge of the lake. Their eyes deep hollows reflecting the moonlight. Sometimes I see them in the cabin windows at night, staring back at me. Sometimes I swear they're inside the walls, always whispering my name. I tried ignoring them once. That night, the forest came to the cabin itself. Branches wrapped against the roof, scratching. Windows fogged from the inside as though breathing. My reflection in the glass multiplied. Faces, dozens of them, watching. One stepped forward, mimicking my movements perfectly. I realized then the rule wasn't about breaking rules. It was about knowing I could. I keep the rule book close now. Every night I read it aloud, line by line, hoping repetition will make the forest forget me, or at least respect me. But the rules keep changing. New lines appear overnight, always warning, always pointing to me. Rule 15 appeared this morning, scrawled in my handwriting. Caretaker is never alone. Caretaker never leaves. I didn't write that, but somehow I did. The previous caretaker's diary in cabin 7. It was empty now. No pages, no writing. Only a single line etched into the leather cover. He is the camp now. I stared at it for hours, shaking. The air hummed with voices. The children. Shadows. Something indistinct. Circling outside, calling my name softly, insistently, impossibly. I talk to them sometimes. Whispered confessions, apologies. They do not answer. Not fully. Only fragments. Words like rule, broken, caretaker, stay, you, belong. The word lingers. It is the only truth here. I've stopped sleeping. Time loses meaning. Hours stretch. Days blend. The sun rises and sets behind a wall of fog. Sometimes I see myself in the lake, standing on the pier. But when I look closer, it's not me. It's an older version. Eyes hollow, lips stretched in a smile I do not recognize. And in the reflection of the water behind me, the children stand, waiting, watching, smiling. Tonight, I write this from the dining hall. One lantern burns, the rest flicker out of fear, or perhaps respect. I see the shadows shifting in the corners of my eyes, circling. I hear the footsteps, light and careful, pacing outside the windows. I don't know if this is punishment, or reward, or simply nature correcting itself. I can no longer tell the difference between dream and memory, between the forest and the cabin, between the children and myself. Sometimes I hear another caretaker arriving. The path opens, footsteps, keys on the signpost. I stay silent. I can't leave, but I watch. The cycle repeats. The camp needs someone, always someone, and now that someone is me. I whisper to myself, almost as a comfort. Follow the rules. Survive the forest. Listen to the children. But the words twist in my mouth. The rules are no longer lines on paper. They are chains. They are the forest itself. They are me. I sit here, flashlight in hand, writing this because I have to. Because the forest is listening. Because the shadows are listening. Because the children, they never stop watching. When someone arrives, soon, inevitably, they will find the same rules nailed to the door, waiting for them. And maybe, just maybe, they will ignore the warning the way I did. And then they will become the caretaker, and I will still be here, still watching, still whispering, still waiting. Because I am Ashwood now. Because the rules are older than the camp. And the caretaker never leaves. That was my own voice calling me. Not through the radio, but somewhere inside my head. My pulse raced. I tried to step back, but the floor seemed to tilt beneath me. Room 9 loomed ahead, the door dark, the scratches deeper now. Then came a sound that I can't explain, like metal dragged across tile. The lodge was old, the floors creaking, but this was different. It was deliberate, rhythmic, methodical, and it was coming toward the lobby. I turned sharply, empty hallway. My eyes followed the path of his boots. Nothing. I told myself again, it's a guest. Just a guest. He's real. But the truth kept slipping away. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my chest, like a tight coil squeezing my lungs. My memory of the accident, a car crash years ago, the one I'd buried deep in the Rockies. It resurfaced in jagged flashes. The smell of snow, the crunch of metal, the scream of someone who couldn't survive. And now, the lodge, the guest, the shadows, all of it twisting together, teasing me, punishing me. The clock struck 3. Rule number 4. If you hear knocking after 3 a.m., don't answer. A soft knock echoed from the vent near room 9. Not the door, the vent. The metal grill rattled. Then the whisper again. You should have followed the rules. I pressed my back against the counter, knees weak. The storm outside was a roar in my ears, the radio static crawling over everything, the lights flickering like a heartbeat. I wanted to run. I wanted to leave the lodge. But Rule No. 3 whispered in my mind, never leave before dawn. And so I waited, hands trembling, watching the shadows twist and writhe under the office door. listening to the guests' boots walking silently down a hallway that had no one in it. By the time dawn would come, if it came, I wasn't sure what would still be real. The lodge felt wrong. I can't explain it any other way. By the time I tried to radio Mara, the static swallowed her voice completely. My words bounced back at me from the receiver, distorted, warped, like I was talking to someone who wasn't there. Mara, are you... Hello? Nothing. I leaned against the counter, chest heaving. The hallway stretched endlessly ahead, each room door looming like a dark eye staring back at me. Room 9's door remained closed, silent now, but I could feel it. A presence, a weight pressing from the other side. My head spun, remembering the whispers through the vents, the shifting shadows, and the thought clawed at me. I shouldn't have checked him in. I tried the lodge's main phone. Dead. The storm outside had cut all lines. Maybe the snowstorm was to blame, or maybe I didn't want to finish that thought. It was then I noticed the footprints in the snow outside, visible through the frosted glass of the lobby doors. Boots, large, dragging slightly, leading away from the porch into the drifts. But they didn't return. I could see them vanish into the white nothing, as if swallowed by the storm itself. I swallowed hard. Room 9, the footprints, Mara, the guest, all of it tangled together. I couldn't tell which was real, which belonged to the lodge, which belonged to me. Desperate, I approached room 9. The door handle was ice cold under my palm. I twisted it slowly. The room was empty. No man, no bed disturbance. Just the faint smell of wet wool and something else. Something old, metallic, almost like rusted blood. I stumbled back, bumping into the wall. The radio crackled again. This time there was a voice, but it wasn't Mara's. Eli. My blood ran cold. It was me, my voice, repeating words I didn't remember saying. And somewhere beneath it, faint laughter, like someone recording the echo of my mistakes and playing it back. I tried to steady myself. The lodge's generator hummed weakly. Lights flickered, then went out completely. Total darkness. My flashlight barely cut a path down the hall. I realized my memory of the past hour was fragmented. Disjointed flashes of the guest entering, leaving, reappearing. Sometimes he seemed to tower over me, sometimes shrink to nothing. My mind was twisting him like clay, molding the threat and fear into shapes I could almost comprehend. I went to the office to check the security monitors. The feed from room 9 made my stomach turn. I froze. The screen showed Mara sitting on the bed, smiling at me. But the timestamp said it was December 10th. My stomach lurched. The real date on the counterclock was also December 10th. No, that couldn't be. I flipped through the old guest book to see her handwriting. There it was, neat and precise. The last entry, Mara, room 9, December 10th. And beneath that, my own handwriting, wet and smeared, signing in a guest I didn't remember. The man, room 9. I pinched my face. My reflection in the monitor warped. Eyes wide, shadows under my cheekbones. Did I imagine him? Had I really let a stranger in? Or was he a projection of something I couldn't face? The guilt of the accident, buried deep in the Rockies years ago, clawed its way back. Faces, metal, snow. Someone screaming. Someone I failed. I stumbled back to the hallway. Room 9's door clicked, closed. I was alone. And yet, I wasn't. Footsteps, soft and deliberate, echoed along the floorboards. Not my own, and not the guest's boots, which now seemed to vanish entirely from memory. Shadows moved in impossible ways. A door ajar here, then closed there. I reached for the radio again. Channel 7. Silence, except for a whisper crawling over the static. You shouldn't have left the lobby. I pressed my back against the wall, trying to remember the rules. Rule number 3. Never leave before dawn. But the hallway stretched endlessly ahead. I felt drawn forward, compelled, even though every instinct screamed to run the opposite direction. Then I noticed the office door, locked. But the key to room 9 sat on the counter in front of me. I didn't remember putting it there. I reached out, trembling. My fingers grazed the cold metal. A voice, soft and coaxing, whispered through the vents. "Come closer, Eli. It's time to remember." Remember what? I wanted to scream. I wanted Mara. I wanted the storm to take the lodge and leave me alone. But my feet moved on their own, toward the office, toward the room I didn't want to face. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. Snow beat against the walls. And inside, the silence grew heavier, pressing in on me like water filling a glass. Room 9, Mara, the guest, my accident, all of it blending into one, a seamless, suffocating loop I couldn't break. I reached the office door. I turned the knob. Cold metal. My hand shook. And then I realized the door wasn't supposed to be locked. At least, not according to the rules I'd memorized. I pushed it open. The office was empty. Papers scattered. Coffee cup overturned. The monitor screens flickered. Static screaming across every feed. And then on one screen, I saw him, the guest. Or was it Mara? Or was it me? Standing behind the counter, staring at the door, smiling. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. And then, a soft click behind me. Room 9. The door shut, and I knew, when I turned back, whatever awaited me inside that room would decide if the lodge had been a refuge or a prison all along. I shouldn't be here. That's the first thing I need you to understand. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to leave the lodge forever, to never set foot on this mountain again. But the rules held me. They whispered in my mind like Mara herself, even though she was gone. Or was she? I stood behind the counter, staring at the hallway where room 9 sat closed and silent. The snowstorm had quieted outside, but inside, the lodge felt alive in a way that was wrong. The walls breathing, the floors creaking, shadows twisting like smoke. I could still hear whispers through the vents. You should have followed the rules. I traced my fingers over the yellowed sheet pinned behind the counter, the rules that had been my guide, my lifeline, my prison. Never look out the back window after midnight. If a guest arrives during a snowstorm, do not check them in. Never leave the lobby before dawn. If you hear knocking after 3 a.m., don't answer. Keep the radio on channel 7. Always. I had broken them all. Every single one. Every lie. Every defiance. Every moment I'd tried to assert control over this place had brought me here. The guest. Room 9. Mara. Myself. They blurred together until I couldn't tell who was real and who was a memory, a hallucination, or a ghost conjured by my guilt. I turned toward the monitor feeds, static, but one camera flickered. Room 9. And there he was, or maybe it was me, or Mara, impossible to tell. A figure stood there, silent, motionless, staring at the counter. The timestamp read December 10th. My pulse raced. My own hands were visible in the reflection, shaking. But the figure in the room moved in ways I couldn't control. I swallowed. My memory of the night, the guest arriving, the footprints, the whispering vents. It collapsed like snow on a roof. Pieces slid, twisted, shifted. Had I imagined him? Or had I imagined myself? My memory of the car accident years ago, someone screaming, metal crunching, it bled into the lodge, into the guest, into Mara. The lodge wasn't just a building, it was a memory, a trap, a mirror. I moved toward room 9. The hallway stretched longer than it should have, warped by something I couldn't name. My flashlight cut a thin line through darkness, shaking with my hands. I reached the door, cold metal handle. I hesitated, one step forward, and whatever waited inside would see me. Maybe it already had. I opened the door, empty, or so it seemed. The bed was unmade, sheets twisted. Snow had tracked in, though the storm had long died down outside. A chair had tipped over, and in the corner, almost blending with the shadows, a figure crouched. Not moving, not breathing, watching, waiting. Eli. The voice came from the vents, the hallway, inside my head. My own voice, Mara's voice. Something older, deeper. I couldn't separate them. I realized then the truth. Story number 1. You ever had to follow rules that didn't make sense, but you followed them anyway. Because deep down, you knew if you broke even one, something would come for you. I broke rule number 3 last week, and now, the thing in room 9 won't stop whispering my name. You ever work a job so quiet that you start hearing your own heartbeat in the walls? That's what the night shift at Blackridge Lodge feels like. A heartbeat, slow and heavy, echoing through the wooden ribs of a building that should have died a long time ago. They told me the pay was good because of the isolation. No distractions, the manager Mara said during the interview. You'll just keep the fire going, log guest check-ins, and follow the rules. I thought she meant company policy. You know, no smoking inside, no pets, no parties. But when I arrived that first night, she handed me a yellowed sheet of paper, wrinkled from years of thumbtacks and nervous fingers. At the top, in red marker, it said, "Rules for the night clerk. Never look out the back window after midnight. If a guest arrives during a snowstorm, do not check them in. Never leave the lobby before dawn. If you hear knocking after 3 a.m., don't answer. It's not the guests. Keep the radio on channel 7. Always." I laughed. I really did. I thought maybe Mara was playing some local joke on the new guy. But her eyes didn't move when I laughed. They just stayed fixed on mine. Cold grey eyes. They're not jokes, Eli. The rules keep the lodge quiet. Quiet. That word stuck with me. The first 2 nights passed easy enough. Empty halls, the hum of the space heater, and the low crackle of the radio static on channel 7. The lodge sat halfway up a Colorado mountain, surrounded by pines so tall they blocked out the stars. There were only 6 rooms, each numbered in brass so tarnished it looked like dried blood. Most nights, all the keys hung neatly behind the desk, untouched. But that third night, the one I'm telling you about, something changed. It started around midnight. The power dipped, lights flickering like someone was breathing through the wires. I remember checking the clock, 12:03 a.m., and my eyes drifted to the back window, the one overlooking the frozen lake. The moonlight pressed through the glass in thin, fractured lines. I thought about the first rule. Never look out the back window after midnight. Of course, I looked. The snow was falling in that slow, heavy way where every flake seems to pause mid-air. The lake was just a sheet of ice, smooth as glass, but there was a shape, dark, unmoving, at the far end of the dock. I blinked, leaned closer. Gone. Probably a tree shadow, I told myself, or my reflection. Still, I pulled the curtains shut. Mara's voice crackled through the radio a minute later. "Everything all right, Eli?" "Yeah," I said, just the lights flickering again. "Don't open the back curtains after midnight," she replied, tone flat. I didn't. That was the first lie I told her. Hours crawled by. Around 2 the storm started. Snow hammering the windows, wind shrieking through the chimney. I made coffee, half listening to the static hum of Channel 7. Every so often, I thought I heard voices in it. like snippets of old conversations buried in the noise. Then came the bell. The small brass bell on the counter, the one no one had touched in days, rang once. A clear, sharp ding. I froze. I hadn't heard the front door open, no footsteps on the wood floor, just that sound. When I looked up, someone stood in the doorway. A man, mid-40s maybe, snow dripping from his coat, boots soaked, breath clouding the air. He didn't speak right away, just stared at me, blinking slowly, like he was remembering how to be human. "Car broke down," he said finally. "Can I get a room?" My first thought wasn't how did he get here, but rule number 2, never check in a guest during a snowstorm. The storm outside was violent now, whiteouts swallowing the porch light. "We're, closed for the season," I lied. "I'll pay cash." He reached into his coat, pulling out a thick, wet wad of bills. His hand shook slightly, or maybe it was mine. I looked toward the key rack. Every tag hung in place except room 9. I could have sworn I saw it there earlier. I blinked and it was gone. "You sure we haven't met before?" I asked. "You always say that," he replied. That sentence shouldn't have chilled me like it did, but something about the way he said it, casual, like it wasn't the first time we'd had this conversation, made my throat go dry. Still, I gave him the form to fill out. Standard info. Name, address, phone number. He wrote something down, signed, and handed it back. When I looked, the ink was smeared, the name unreadable. Just a stain across the page, like someone had dragged a wet finger through it. The lights flickered again. When they came back, he was already walking down the hallway, boots echoing on the floorboards. I called after him. "Hey, you need a key." But he didn't stop, just turned the corner toward room 9. I stared at the guest book. My hand trembled as I flipped back a few pages. There were old names, travelers, hikers, couples, but none in the last 3 months. The last entry before his was dated December 10th. Mara's handwriting. I checked the date on the clock. December 10th. The pen slipped from my fingers. The air in the room felt too thick, like the walls were closing in. I turned to the radio, twisting the knob to clear the static. But all I heard was a faint whisper, my own voice, repeating, "You shouldn't have looked out the window." The coffee mug shattered in my hand. Somewhere down the hall, a door clicked shut. Room 9, I waited for Mara to radio again, for anyone to break the silence. But the only thing that answered was the wind pressing against the glass, and under it, something else. A soft, deliberate knock, 3 times. I didn't move, I didn't breathe, because the knocking wasn't coming from the front door. It was coming from behind me, from the back window I'd sworn to keep shut. I should never have checked him in. That's the first thing I want you to know. But I did. Because when someone stands there, soaked to the bone, eyes like hollowed out coins, holding a fistful of cash, the rules suddenly feel like suggestions. The storm outside had grown violent. Snow whipped against the lodge windows with a sound like nails on a coffin lid. The wind howled down the chimney, rattling the radiator pipes, and somewhere a branch scraped against the roof. I could barely see the front steps through the blizzard, and yet he appeared as if the snow itself had delivered him, shadowed and dripping, leaning on the doorframe like he belonged there. "Car broke down," he said. "I can't leave," he added, almost as an afterthought. When I asked for ID, he shook his head, eyes darting past me, over my shoulder, like he expected someone, to be standing there. He insisted on paying cash, thick bills wet and heavy in my hands. The ink was smudged, almost illegible, and yet he smiled at me as if the transaction didn't matter. I handed him the key to room 9. As soon as he took it, he walked down the hall. His boots echoed against the polished wooden floors, though the hallway was otherwise empty. I double-checked the key rack. Room 9's tag was gone. He was already inside. Then the power cut out. Everything went black for a heartbeat. I swore I heard the faintest click, like a door closing, though the lodge was silent. The emergency lights flickered on, casting long, twisting shadows that seemed to crawl along the walls. And then I saw it. A silhouette under my office door. The hallway was empty, but that shadow, it wasn't mine, Eli. Mara's voice crackled through the radio. Yeah, everything's fine, I lied, forcing calm into my voice. The lie tasted metallic in my mouth. I could feel it sticking there. I turned back toward room 9. The air smelled wrong, like burnt coffee and wet wool, but sour underneath. The door was closed, but faint scratches ran across the wood, shallow, almost deliberate. I swear I heard a whisper, something soft, crawling through the vents. You should have followed the rules. I froze, my hands gripping the counter, knuckles white. I told myself it was the wind, maybe a rat in the walls, or maybe my imagination playing tricks. But the shadow didn't move, and the whisper came again, clearer this time. I could feel the vibration through the air vents, crawling across my skin. You should have followed the rules. The guest, or whatever he was, didn't seem to notice me. Or maybe he did, but he didn't care. I tried to remember what he looked like. At first I thought he was tall, broad-shouldered, dark coat. But in my mind, his figure shifted, sometimes shorter, thinner, like he was melting into the hallway. His face, I could never hold on to it. Some nights it was lined, tired, other nights smooth, featureless, almost porcelain. His eyes remained the same, hollow coins, always watching. I poured a cup of coffee, tried to convince myself the steam would anchor me to reality. But when I looked at the counter clock, it had moved backward. 5 minutes. 10. I pinched myself. Nothing. Time itself seemed to hiccup, skipping, twisting. My memory of the day was fuzzy. Had the guest really arrived 5 minutes ago? Or had it been hours? A loud thump came from room 9. Not a footstep, something heavier. I swallowed, trying to steady my breath. Another thump, then scratching, and then silence. I went to the door. Slowly, just my hand on the handle, cold metal biting my palm. I listened, no breathing, no moving, nothing. I wanted to turn around, call Mara, explain everything. But when I reached for the radio, the static changed. The whispers returned, now overlapping with something else. Laughter. Soft, dry, almost like a record skipping. Eli. Eli. My stomach dropped. Room 9 had never been a room for guests. It was a room for me. My guilt, my failures, my memory of that car crash, of the person I couldn't save. All of it stored here, waiting for me to break the rules, waiting for me to acknowledge it. I stepped inside fully. My flashlight trembled in my grip. Shadows moved independently of the light. The figure in the corner rose slowly, stretching impossibly, bending time and space around it. I recognized myself in it, or maybe Mara, or the guest. A twisted reflection of all the fear I'd ignored. I backed away, heart hammering. My hand hit the desk. The radio flickered to life on channel 7. Static. Then a whisper. At sunrise, you either leave or you stay forever. I pressed my face to the window. Dawn. Pale, grey light seeping through the frost. The world outside seemed normal. Snow blanketed the earth, but inside, the lodge was alive, breathing, twisting, remembering. I knew the choice wasn't really mine. Staying meant confronting everything, The accident, the guest, Mara, the whispers, the rules. Leaving meant leaving myself behind. I turned back to the counter. On it lay the guest book. My hands shook as I opened it. Names smeared, dates shifting. December 10th repeated endlessly. And there, written clearly, was my own signature. The guest, room 9, the check-in that shouldn't have happened. I had made him real. Or he had made me. I couldn't tell anymore. The door clicked. Room 9, the floorboards creaked. I couldn't move. The figure stepped into the hallway, melting into the shadows. My pulse stopped. Time stretched. I could feel every heartbeat echoing through the lodge. I whispered, almost to myself, almost to the lodge, almost to whoever was watching. If anyone new comes here, tell them to follow the rules. They'll keep you alive, or at least keep you from remembering what you did. Static swallowed my voice. The monitor feeds froze, the lobby empty. The hallway stretched endlessly. The lodge had decided, and I realized the final rule had always been unspoken. Rule number 6. Remember the rules, or you never leave. I sank into the chair behind the counter. Dawn broke outside. Pale light creeping over the snow. My mind frayed. Shadows danced where the walls should have been solid. And somewhere, deep in the vents, the whisper returned one last time. You broke the rules. Now you stay. I closed my eyes, trying to remember the world outside the lodge. The one where I was alive, where I had a choice. But it was gone. Lost to the mountain, the storm and the rules I had broken, the lodge waited. And I waited with IT. Story number 3. They said the light must never go out, but no one told me what happens when it shines on me. When my uncle died, he left me his lighthouse on the Oregon coast. Everyone said it was a blessing. I thought so too, until I found the journal, the one that lists the rules. And I've already broken 2. They say a lighthouse keeps people safe. But when I first saw mine, I swear it was watching me back. That's how it started. A simple trip to the Oregon coast. 3 hours of winding roads. Rain slicing across my windshield. And a letter on the passenger seat, with my name scrawled in my uncle's trembling handwriting. To Eli, the light is yours now. I hadn't seen Uncle Thomas in nearly a decade. Last I heard, he'd gone off the grid. My mum said the lighthouse kept him sane. The neighbours said it did the opposite. I didn't believe either of them. Not until I parked at the edge of that cliff and felt the ground hum beneath my feet. Like the earth itself was warning me not to go closer. The lighthouse rose above the fog like a white, blind eye. Paint peeling, rust streaking down the railings, windows clouded by salt. It should have looked dead, but the lamp, God, the lamp was glowing, faintly pulsing even though no one had touched it in months. Inside, the air smelled like oil and seawater. Dust motes floated in the beam that seeped through the cracked door. Everything looked paused. The chair at the table still pulled out. A mug with dried coffee by the sink. A jacket hanging on the wall. Like Thomas just stepped out for a minute and never came back. I told myself I wasn't scared. That's what you do when you're alone in a place that feels alive. You lie to yourself until you start to believe it. I unpacked the essentials. My duffel bag, a flashlight, a bottle of cheap whiskey. The keeper's quarters were small, barely enough room for a bed, desk, and that damn lamp that wouldn't stop flickering. I tried to ignore the sound at first, the low rhythmic click. Click, click like gears shifting above my head, the beacon turning, even though the power had been cut off for years. That's when I found the journal. It was on the desk, bound in cracked leather, the spine worn smooth from use. Across the cover, in Thomas's neat handwriting, rules for the keeper. At first, I thought it was some kind of nautical manual, something boring about fuel maintenance or schedules. But no, it was a list, a strange one. Keep the light burning. Never leave the door unlocked after sunset. Never look directly at the light after midnight. If the foghorn sounds twice, stay inside. When you hear footsteps on the stairs, do not answer. I laughed, out loud even, because what kind of man writes rules like these? Thomas must have lost his mind before he died. The floorboards creaked as I walked up the spiral staircase to the lantern room. The air got colder with each step, and that faint humming grew sharper, almost electrical. I reached the top, expecting to see dust and cobwebs. Instead, the glass was spotless. The brass reflected my flashlight like a mirror, and there, in the reflection, I thought I saw someone behind me, just for a second, a shadow in the fogged glass, tall, shoulders hunched, motionless. When I turned, no one was there, just the beam, cutting across the sea in slow, steady arcs. I tried the switchboard out of habit. No power. The wires were ripped, frayed like something had chewed through them. Yet the lamp still turned. I remember whispering, "How?" That was my first mistake, talking to it. I came back down to the kitchen, poured a drink, and read the journal again. It felt wrong to touch it. The pages were damp, but not from moisture. Almost warm, like skin. My uncle's handwriting grew messier toward the end, slanting upward as if he'd written in a panic. The light is not for them. It's for me. It remembers what I did. I closed the book. My reflection in the window looked pale, hollow-eyed. I hadn't slept in nearly 30 hours. The ocean roared below, constant and merciless. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe grief was playing tricks on me. But the light wouldn't stop. Midnight came quietly. I was lying in bed, counting the seconds between the beam's rotations. 4, maybe 5. Each time it passed, my room brightened, then dimmed. I couldn't stop watching the glow crawl across the ceiling. Never look directly at the light after midnight. That rule looped in my head until I couldn't resist. Curiosity always wins, doesn't it? I got up, barefoot, the floor cold beneath me, climbed halfway up the stairs, just enough to see through the glass slit of the lantern room. The beam swept across the fog like a blade of white fire. It moved slower than before, dragging through the mist, and then it paused, stopped mid-rotation, aimed straight at me. The air turned thick. The light grew, too bright, too white, and for a moment I thought I saw something inside it. Shapes, faces, hundreds of them, all turning in unison, all staring down, then darkness. I woke on the floor, my watch reading 3:17 a.m. My eyes burned. The foghorn wailed once, then again. 2 long, low notes that shook the windows. I stumbled to the window, pulled the curtain aside, and froze. At the edge of the cliff, where the beam had last shone, stood a figure, barefoot, still, facing the lighthouse. I tried to tell myself it was a trick of the fog, that maybe someone from the village wandered up here, but the nearest town was 5 miles away, and the tide was high. No one could have made it through the rocks. I blinked. The figure was gone. The journal lay open on the desk behind me. I swear I hadn't touched it, but a new line was written beneath the 5th rule. Fresh ink, still glistening. You've already looked. The light sees you now. The beam started moving again, sweeping the horizon like nothing had happened. I didn't sleep after that. I just sat there, waiting for the dawn that never seemed to come, listening to the sea breathing outside and the slow, endless turn of the light that never sleeps. And somewhere in the fog, I thought I heard someone whisper my name. The fog doesn't just hide things. Sometimes it brings them to you. That's what I told myself the first night I heard the footsteps. Soft, deliberate taps echoing on the metal staircase. then silence. I froze every time, heart hammering, waiting for the next step. Only there never was one. Or maybe there was. I can't remember clearly anymore. That's part of the problem with this place. You start losing time, hours slipping into each other, like water through your fingers. I had locked every door, double-checked the windows, even wedged the spiral staircase shut at the top. Yet every night those steps came. They never climbed past a certain point, stopping as if someone, or something, knew exactly where I was. Then came Marina. I remember the first time I saw her, a silhouette at the edge of the cliff, swallowed almost entirely by the fog. She was tall, thin, wearing a hooded coat that flapped in the wind. I thought she was a hallucination, another trick of exhaustion, but she waved, then called my name. Eli? Her voice was soft, melodic, but carried a weight I didn't understand. My own name, spoken like she knew the person I used to be before I came here. Who are you? I asked. Marina, she said, from the harbour town nearby. You shouldn't be alone here. I laughed, though it sounded hollow. Alone? That was the point, wasn't it? To inherit something my uncle left for me, to prove I could keep the light burning. I'm fine, I said. I can handle it. No one keeps that light for long, she warned, stepping closer. It demands more than you know. Her eyes lingered on me for too long, scanning like she could see through skin and bone, straight into memory. I tried to convince myself she knew nothing about me, that she couldn't possibly know the things I'd done, but she did. Or at least she acted like she did that night after she left, or maybe she never left. I discovered something worse than footsteps. Fresh footprints in the spiral tower, muddy, human-shaped, leading straight up to the lantern room. I remembered locking that door. I knew I did. My chest tightened. I whispered, trying to reason. I didn't see anyone. I couldn't have. I stopped. My voice sounded foreign in my own ears, distant, like it belonged to someone else entirely. Rule number 5 from Thomas's journal echoed in my mind. If someone knocks at the door after 3 a.m., let them in. It's safer that way. AM came faster than I wanted. I was curled up on the bed, the journal open on my chest, fog pressing against the window like a living thing. Then the first knock, slow, deliberate. 2 short raps. I swallowed. My hands shook as I reached for the door, hesitating. Another knock, this time 3. My breath caught in my throat. The fog pressed closer, swirling around the window pane, almost mocking me. Who's there? I called, my voice barely more than a whisper. Silence. Then a faint rustle. I thought I saw a shadow under the door, moving. My stomach twisted. I tried to tell myself it was Marina, but I knew it wasn't. At least, I wanted it to be. I opened the door and froze. I gasped, the sound catching in my throat. I don't remember moving my feet forward. I don't remember stepping outside, but the fog was thick, swirling around me like smoke. I squinted, trying to make out a figure. Something stood there, tall, still, barely breathing. I swear it wasn't human, and yet it was. Or maybe it was human, and I just didn't recognize it anymore. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but my legs felt like stone. I blinked, and it was gone. The fog shifted. The beam of the lighthouse cut through it, trembling like a live thing. I turned back inside. The journal lay on the floor. I had no memory of dropping it, and the pages had been rearranged. Her handwriting, or what looked like it, appeared in the margins. He sees what you hide. Don't trust the steps.